Yeah, greetings and welcome back to another one of our PSCM Mojo session. And this Sunday, I'm glad to say I have with me again, Brother Vasco Stevenson. And as you can see from the title today, we'll be looking at the truth about Easter. What are we celebrating when we celebrate Easter? Where did it come from? And what does it have to do with African culture? Hopefully Vasco will be Vasco will be filling us in with all that later. But as usual, before we go into our main presentation, I'll now hand over to Ndugu Mani, who will be changing the vibrations for us.
Santi Sana Ndugu and Hamjambo Jamal, which means in Kiswahili, greetings, kindred. My name is Ndugu Imani. I am a member of the Pan-African Congress movement and an African spiritual life coach. And greetings to Ndugu Vasco again. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your information with us today. And as we said,
thank you.
And as we said, what does Easter have to do with African culture? Well, let's practice our African culture as we are going to do now with our ritual, our invocation, we call Mabadiliko la Nishati, which in Kiswahili means changing of the energy. Yes, because we are all energy. We all come from that one source of energy, and it manifests in infinite forms. And so it's about, this is to help us get us in the right frame of mind, right spirit, so that we can share with each other wherever we may be. If we're using this artificial form of cyberspace, when we'd love to be together, but we can still share with each other, connect with each other on a deep spiritual sense, but we need to get ourselves into that right frame of mind. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to breathe together. Breath is the system of life. We won't last long without breath, and it's also that connection between our physical being and our spiritual being. So to get us into the right frame of mind, we're going to breathe to get breath in a form called a kettle pot-belly breathing, which I'll explain as we do it. So we're using the whole of our lung capacity to make us to bring us centered and more calm, and also move us away from where our enemies want us to be, which is to be animalistic and emotional and reactive. Okay, so and we're going to now breathe together. And Ndugu Tahaka, what I'll ask of you is if you have a number that springs to mind that's you're resonating with.
Okay, number 5.
Five.
Tano,
5. Beautiful. The Tano 5 is the spiritual quantity for flexibility, for activity, for change. Okay. So very apt for what we're talking about today. Changing our minds, changing our understanding, being flexible is what we understand, and in other ways for us personally. So this is beautiful. So going to breathe together. What we're going to do is we're going to breathe out. As we breathe out, we're going to pull our stomachs in as far as they go. That forces the air out of our lungs. Then we're going to relax our stomachs, and that will the stomach will expand, and the air will come into our nostrils. Okay, so we sit straight wherever we are as best as we can, so that our 7 energy centers are all in line. There is the Hindu Kush called the chakras. Your feet flat on the floor, palm of your hands on your thighs if you can. Okay, we close our eyes, and we breathe out, we breathe in, and that's one cycle. Okay, so, and I'll count in Kiswahili to keep time. And we'll begin. Hold it, moja. Breathing in. And breathe out. Hold it. And relax, breathe in. And daily. Breathe out. And hold it. Relax. Breathe in. Tatu. Breathe out. Pull that stomach in. So that's the stomach in through the nose. In there. And finally breathe out. And relax and breathe in. Tana. Asante. Okay. So and Dugu. Continue with as our ritual. So I'm going to share the screen so everyone can follow. This takes roughly now about 12, 13 minutes. And we're doing this so that we can become more familiar with our own practices. This isn't any better than any other traditional practice. They all are linked. It's just the one that we use here that has Kemetic terms and terms from Buldan as well. And it's in English. We have the translations in English so that people can follow and that can understand. If you do wish to take part, please do. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. It's not about coercion. If you and you want to come back, we'll be back in say about 10 minutes. But please, if you are, then please want to take part, please do. But it's us taking the time to show respect and honor to ourselves. These things are not outside of us. These are us and our ways. We become familiar and strengthened in them because this is our culture. This is our foundation, and we can spend a little bit of time just getting ourselves in the right frame of mind using our cultural techniques. Okay, so I'll begin. Kubadilisha nguvu sasa tunawashukuru wote mamlaka na mababu kuuliza kwamba tuna uhusiano wa karibu na kwamba watusaide katika kuonyesha malengo yetu, which means to change the energy. We now thank the all, the powers and the ancestors, to ask that we have a closer connection with them and they assist us in manifesting our objectives. And in order to do that, I'm going to ring this triangle chime, the geometric shape of 3. It's a powerful quantity of 3, which means birth and creativity. So Spirit says for me to ring it 4 times. So 4 for abundance, for stability and health and growth. So as I ring it 4 times, we allow that vibration to go around us, through us, and over us, bring us into resonance with the area, that space that we're in. We give of our energy to the all, to the Creator, as our offering. And it also allows us to open up our third eye, our pituitary gland, and so that we can connect to universal consciousness. And as we connect with universal consciousness, we connect with each other wherever we are in the world. And so I'll begin. Close eyes, breathe deeply, and let yourself resonate with the chime. I'll begin. I'll count in Kiswahili to keep time. Moja. Mbili. Tatu. Nne. Open our eyes, and I'll continue to the call and response, where we're saying, calling upon these powers, and the understanding that these powers are not outside of us, they are us. So we're making an invocation upon the powers that are within us. We are the Creator, we are that vibration, we are that those elemental forces. It's a very powerful thing that we're saying. So, as I say it, and then we'll say together, Sisini Kitu Kumoja, which is we are one or we are the same thing. So I'll begin. Ninaomba, Yamaomba, Awote. Sisini Kitu
Sisini
Kamoja.
Kitu Kamoja.
Ninamba Ya Nebacha. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Kitu Kamoja.
Ninamba Kanunina Nguvu Ya Mami Wata. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Shu. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Tefnut. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Nut. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Go on to the Pautnetaru, the Kemetic Tree of Life, the spiritual science to perfect the human being, so that perfection and balance brings balance to all existence. Going from the lowest vibration to the highest vibration. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Geb. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Auset. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Sebek. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Heteru. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Haru. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Herakuti. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Maat. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Saka. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Tahuti. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Ausa. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. And the highest vibration, ninaomba kanunina nguvu ya Amen. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. And now, as we've given thanks to the first ancestor, the creator, the All, now we can give thanks to those ancestors in our direct bloodline, who if they had not manifested and incarnated, we wouldn't be here. So, I'll begin. Ninaomba Mama Yangu, my mother, Audrey Mae Kelly. Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Tafadhali Jamal, please, Kindred.
Yeah. Ninaomba Mababa Ya Iselin Rattigan, na Sylvester Rattigan, na Ruth James, na Louise Hines.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. Duga Vasco?
To my grandmother, Sarah Johnson.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja. If anybody else wish to call upon those in their direct bloodline, please do. Right, so now we can go on to those ancestors who are not in our direct bloodline, but who we wish to honor because they gave of their time, their effort, and sometimes of their very lives, or they did give their very lives, for the liberation of African people and the forwarding of our people. I'll begin. Ninaomba Mzee, the Honorable Marcus Mzaa Garvey. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba Baba Ya Brother Tagel, na Brother Dogi, na Sister Jan.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Kitu Kamoja.
Brother Martin Luther King, Sisini
Kitu Kumoja.
Kumoja.
Ninaomba wazee Amy Ashwood Garvey, Amy Jacques Garvey, na Marcus Garvey Jr. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja.
Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba mababa ya Sheikh Amadou Bamba na Helen Saturi Jata na Steve Bantabiku na Robert Sibikwi.
Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja.
Kumoja. President John Magufuli from Tanzania.
Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba wazee Dr. Francis Cress Welsing na Winnie Mandela na Ya Santwa na Sabomfu Some. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Anything else? Okay.
Winnie Mandela.
Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba wazee Thomas Sankara na Kwame Nkrumah na Patrice Lumumba. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Now we can give a thanks and honor to those ancestors who we don't always know their names. Ninaomba Bababu ya Mangamazi. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba Mababu ya Gula Vita, as we fought the Gula Wars. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba Mababu ya Asian Revolution. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba Mababu ya watu ya First Nations of Australia, Tasmania, Papuans, na Dravidians. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba Mababu ya wanachama ya APLA, na SWAPO, na Freedom and Land Party, na Black Panthers. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba Mababu ya watu ya Kemet, na Taseti, na Kush, na Nubia, na Mosai. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba Mababu ya watu ya San, na Twa, na Hutu, the First Peoples. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. Ninawaomba wanaishi ambao watatetea sisi, na wale mababu ambao bado hawajazaliwa. Sisi ni Kitu Kumoja. And then we finally say in Kiswahili and finally in Cometian terms, these words of power and manifestation. The very words that we speak as the vibration of the first ancestor, the creator. They have the energy to bring into fruition that which we wish. So be very careful what we say about ourselves and what we say about our people. So we're going to say this with intent. Intent is the key. Whatever we imagine, we then produce. The only thing that limits us is what we dwell upon, is what our own imaginations. Whatever we dwell upon is what we create. So we say with energy and power the words of manifestation on screen. So just follow after me. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu wetu.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Mapenzi yetu.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Hakuna
Hakuna
Awanzo.
Mwanzo.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Na
Na
Hakuna
hakuna
Mwisho.
mwisho.
Anuk. Amen.
Anuk.
Amen.
Amen.
All power to our people. The will of the all is our will. There is no beginning and there is no end. I am. Amen. Asante ni sana, Jamal. Thanks very much, Kindred.
Yeah, asante sana for that, Ndugu Imani.
Okay, I'll join you at the end.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, now I'd like to introduce you to Brother Vasco Stevenson, who is no stranger to us. He's been on this channel a few times and he's always very welcome because his talks are very thought-provoking, interesting, and full of, knowledge and new knowledge, because he always seemed to be able to come up with some gems. So today is no difference. He'll be looking at the truth about Easter. And I think today itself is Easter Day. So I'm sure a lot of you, especially if in the Caribbean, have gone out today and bought your bun and cheese and so forth. But do you really know what you are celebrating? Do you really know the truth behind Easter, what it's about? And if it has any significance to us as African people. So with no further ado, I'd like to pass you over now to Vasco. And Vasco will be speaking roughly for about 60 minutes, after which we'll be opening up the floor for questions and comments. So, Brother Vasco, are you ready?
I am, whenever you are, sir.
Okay, so I'll put up the PowerPoint. Yes, that's up now. So I'll hand things over to you.
Thank you so much. And it is Easter Day today. And the sun is shining. It's a beautiful evening. You wouldn't believe that it's been quite warm. And there must be a reason for it. And there's so much happening this particular Easter. And I'll be touching on that later in the program. So without further ado, let's move on to the next screen. Easter actually began as a pagan festival celebrating spring in the northern hemisphere long before the advent of Christianity. Since prehistoric times, people have celebrated the equinoxes and the solstices. And only a couple of weeks ago, we had the vernal equinox. I think it was on the 20th of March. But let's look at the word pagan. What is pagan? What is paganism? What is it about? Well, nowadays, if someone calls you a pagan, well, they wouldn't call you a pagan. The word they would use is heathen. Someone who did not adhere to a mainstream religion. Someone who worshiped nature, who was in touch with nature. Is that such a bad thing, being in touch with nature? Given a choice, which would you as an individual rather choose? To be in touch with nature or to be part of mainstream religion? Think carefully about it. Pagans also worshipped many gods. They had a god for everything. Nowadays, Christianity and other religions have a single god, a single entity that they worship. Which one is right? Which one is wrong? We don't know, because in the Bible, the Creator, God, said, "Let us," plural, "make man in our image." And the Bible also mentions the Elohim, Elohim being the plural of El. So ask yourself another question. To whom was the Creator speaking when he said, "Let us make man in our image"? Was he speaking to a pantheon of gods, or was he speaking to another aspect of himself? Perhaps a feminine aspect, because there's duality, male and female normally. Ponder about that, and perhaps in the question and answer, some people will come up with some ideas on it. Pagans believe that nature is sacred and that the natural cycles of birth, growth, and death observed in the world around us carry profoundly spiritual meanings. Birth, growth, and death. Generation, operation, declination. God. Okay? Human beings are seen as part of nature, along with animals, trees, stones, plants, and everything else that is of this earth. So everything is considered to be a part of God or a part of nature. The word pagan nowadays, without a capital P, is often used to describe anyone who holds religious beliefs that differ from the main world religions. A similar term is heathen, as I said a few minutes ago. But if you use the word pagan with a capital P, it often refers to people who follow new pagan religions and honor the earth. Because there's a new breed of people who call themselves neo-pagans. They try to honor the earth. One such new pagan religion, call it that, is something called Wicca, W-I-C-C-A. And the feast day of Easter, today, being Easter Day, was first a pagan holiday of renewal and rebirth. Honored in the early spring, it praised the Saxon goddess Easter. And this word is pronounced Easter, just that the R comes before the E. When early Christian missionaries converted the Saxons here in the UK to Christianity, the spring holiday, because it occurred near the same season as the traditional memorial of Christ's resurrection from the dead, was joined together with the Christian and the pagan coming together, and this was known as Easter. That is how it applied here in the UK. But it all began way, way back in time with a person named Nimrod. And Nimrod was the person who was responsible for the construction of the Tower of Babel. Some people pronounce that the Tower of Babel. I prefer the word Babel, okay? Because when you talk on incessantly, people say you're babbling, not rather than babbling. Okay. And I hope I'm not babbling on this. Okay, so Nimrod was the person who began it all, because he decided that he would construct a building that was so high it would reach to the heavens, and the creator or God would not be able to destroy this building with a second flood. Okay, and as I will show you, he was a great hunter, and he was married to a lady called Semiramis, who is actually the same woman as Easter, who the Anglo-Saxons, where the name came from, the Anglo-Saxons. And they had a son whose name was Tammuz, who was also mentioned in the Bible, believe it or not, okay, in the Old Testament in Genesis. Like most others of his time, Nimrod knew of his creator's laws, the laws of heaven, the laws of God, but he hated them. Just as many people today have been led to believe, Nimrod believed that if he lived by Yahweh's rules, he wouldn't enjoy life because there were certain earthly pleasures that couldn't be brought into, the spiritual realm, the godly realm. So he lived by his own laws and tried to prove to others that they should do the same. Every man living to suit himself, to create his own laws and living by them. A recipe for chaos, if you ask me. And who was Semiramis, his wife, and his mother? She was meant to be the mother and wife of Nimrod, whose other name was also Baal, Baal, another name for Lucifer, Satan, Moloch, call it whatever you want to. And she was called Ishtar, pronounced Easter in English, Astarte, Astaroth, and Isis of Egypt, and Mary in the Roman Catholic Church. So what we are seeing here is a time span where during different periods you get the same character repeated but with a different name, different avatars, if you want to use that expression. Okay, and if we look at the Christian one, this is the Christian era, Christ, Jesus, but we can go back in time and we can see the same story repeated with Tammuz, Dionysus, Mithra, and a plethora of other avatars from the past. So this lady, Easter, had a pretty dark side to her. Easter, or more properly, Ishtar, complete with symbolic eggs. You can see it here in a representation of her. And you have the rabbit. Although there are some questions about the rabbit, okay? But she is supposed to have descended from heaven in an egg. And that is one of the reasons why eggs are still used as a symbol of Easter. So let's move on. And she went by different names. In Greek, she went by the name of Aphrodite, Artemis, Athena, Demeter, Gaia. And Gaia is a name that's used quite often these days because Gaia, spelled with an I, G-A-I-E, represents the earth, Mother Nature. Okay? She also went by the name of Hera, or Hestia, or Rhea. And in Latin, or in Roman times, those names were Venus, Diana, Minerva, Ceres, Terra, Juno, Vesta, and Ops. So you can see that in different cultures, the same character is called by different names. But the storyline, the content of what they represented is the same throughout. Okay. The Babylonians considered the egg a sacred symbol that represented Ostera's fertility and new life. And they talked about the 28-day cycle of the moon and, of course, the monthly cycle of living. And the Babylonians believed in a fable about a huge egg that fell from heaven into the Euphrates River, which hatched Queen Semiramis. And so over a period of time, egg dyeing, that means painting eggs, was observed in the evil rituals celebrating the spring equinox. Now, this writer talked about the evil rituals. because a lot of these rituals were not designed to improve the behavior or characters of individuals. So they were considered to be evil rituals, which incidentally are still practiced today. So where do bunnies and Easter eggs really come into this? The bunnies represent fertility and the eggs represent new beginnings, because an egg is a complete entity in itself. It's a complete chicken or bird, okay? And they have always been associated with the goddess, but in spite of the church's attempt to discourage the worship of the goddess, it crept into the celebration of Easter in many places around the world. And I'm going to touch on that and show you how these pagan beliefs actually took over Christianity, rather than Christianity converting the pagans to religion. Semiramis became known as Ishtar, which is pronounced Easter, and her moon egg became known as Ishtar's egg. And she soon became pregnant and claimed that it was the rays of the sun god Baal, Satan, the devil, Lucifer, Moloch, whatever you want to use, that caused her to conceive. The son that she brought forth was named Tammuz. There's a bit of mythology that also says that Semiramis was also a lady of ill repute. And that's why we have the bunnies about the place, because, you know, bunnies or rabbits can, they're prolific breeders. And if I may digress for 2 seconds to tell you a little bit about rabbits, one of the reasons why they're such prolific breeders is simply because a rabbit can be pregnant and can be impregnated again. So the female can be carrying 2 or 3 different litters of fetuses in her body. Okay, that's one of the peculiarities about rabbits. That's why they can produce so prolifically. And the second one, of course, is that in a season where food may be scarce, a pregnant rabbit has the ability to abort that fetus by reabsorbing it back into her body. 2 peculiarities about rabbits. But this lady is supposed to have had a little bit of a reputation, not quite as a lady of the night, but a reputation which modern texts and modern writings seem to have written out of the story. And we talked about worshiping Baal, and this worship has come right through thousands of years, the time right through, and is still very much in evidence today. In fact, we are witnessing it being played out right now as we speak. That's what we have with this COVID and other things that have been happening in the world. We have the worship of this Baal against God the Creator, and that's the battle that's being fought right now as we speak. Good versus evil. And on the left is an artist's impression of what the Tower of Babel looked like, according to descriptions from ancient texts. And on the right-hand side is the EU Parliamentary Building in Strasbourg, which incidentally, and according to their adverts, when the building was being constructed, was being modeled on the Tower of Babel. Now, why would they do that? The simple common sense answer is the same ungodly practices that Nimrod was carrying out in Babel is the same ungodly practices that they are carrying out in this building in Strasbourg. Okay, and we have seen that manifest through the years, and I was about to say culminating in what is happening now in the world. But in English-speaking countries and in Germany, Easter itself takes its name from a pagan goddess from Anglo-Saxon England who was described in a book by the 8th century English monk Bede. Easter was a goddess of spring or renewal, and that's why her feast is attached to the vernal equinox, the beginning of spring, the end of the beginning of the summertime, when spring is there and all the plants are beginning to bloom. In Germany, the festival is called Ostern and the goddess is called Ostara. Same entity, different location, different name. And in most countries in Europe, the name for Easter is derived from the Jewish festival of Passover, because these two fall right about the same time. And if you're familiar with the biblical story of the Passover, when all the firstborn children of what is now known as Egypt were killed, but those who had painted a sign on their front doors, who allegedly were Jewish, nothing happened to them. So they were passed over. Okay? I'm going to touch on that a little bit further down. So in Greek, the feast is called Pascha. In Italian, it's called Pasqua. In Danish, it's called Paschi. And in French, it's called Pax. So you can see in different countries and in different cultures, you have different names for the same festival. Easter is the Christian holiday that celebrates the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth 3 days after he died from crucifixion by the Roman magistrate Pontius Pilate. That's around the year 30 Common Era, or what we used to call Anno Domini, AD. Easter Sunday is the culmination of the week-long events that preceded his death. So today is the culmination of Easter, okay? And it's a Christian holiday, not celebrated by any other mainstream religion like Islam or Judaism or Buddhism or Taoism, none of those, just as Christian holiday. And from a Christian religious perspective, it celebrates the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. And I'm going to show you that in some Christian situations, it does not always represent that. Christians celebrate Easter on the Sunday after Passover. So it's the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the spring equinox, which is today. And Easter represents hope and renewal for those who really believe in it. Hope and renewal, because you have, as I said, the plants are beginning to bloom. Yes, all the apple trees and fruit trees and other things are coming into being. The lambs are being born. And you're coming into the good season. And if you look at the word good, because we're talking here about the northern hemisphere as well, good is the summer. And if you take out one of the O's, you have the word God. And winter, when everything is cold, and unless you stacked away food that you grew during the summer, you would starve in the winter. So winter was generally regarded as evil. And that's where you had the concept of good and evil, God and evil. And if you do a little bit of etymology and spell the word evil from right to left, it means live. Okay, so you can see how these words were played around with and given different meanings, and came to right through the language which we use today. So God is good, that is represented by the summer. Winter is evil, and that is represented by the opposite to God, which of course we know as Satan or the devil. And where does this come into it? Hot cross buns. People usually eat these at Easter time. So where does this come into it? Cross buns were eaten by the Saxons to honor the same Easter, celebrated in April, whose name, according to the Venerable Bede, is the origin of the word Easter. And for Easter, goddess of the dawn and fertility, the cross symbolized the 4 quarters of the moon: new moon, first quarter, full moon, last quarter. But it also symbolized more than that. Because if you look very quickly, if you look at the buns and look at them here, what you can have here is north, to the right hand side, east, west, south. North, east, west, south. And if you spell that, if you put that together, north, east, west, and south, what have you got? You've got something called news, and that's where the word news comes from. Okay, because information was coming from the north, the east, the west, and the south. So that's where the word news comes from. The bun marks the end of Lent. That's the period when people fast. Christian people, that is. And different parts of the hot cross buns have a certain meaning, including the cross representing the crucifixion of Jesus, and the spices inside signifying the spices used to embalm him at his burial. And this is the Christian view of it. Obviously, there are some who are of the opinion that no such individual actually existed or was crucified on an external cross. Okay? The profound connection between Easter and Passover is not just that the Last Supper was a Passover. Both holidays are about the dead rising to new life. They arrive together every spring, like the daffodils and the magnolia blossoms. Passover is understood as the commemoration of the Israelites being led out of Egypt, that word again, after having been slaves under the Pharaoh's rule for hundreds of years. Now, the Kabbalists, who would be Jewish, of course, explained that in truth, the story of the Israelites in Egypt is the story of each one of us. So if it's a story about every one of us, it cannot then be an external story. It has to be an internal story. Okay? And let me use the word Kemet rather than Egypt. In Kemet, they kept meticulous records, absolutely meticulous records. They were perhaps the best record keepers around at that time. And nowhere in those records can it be found that a group of people left Egypt and left Kemet and crossed the Red Sea into the Promised Land, as they call it. And that's why the Kabbalists are saying it's a story of each one of us. Let me also say that the word Egypt in mythology meant confusion. And the word Pharaoh who is supposed to have chased Israelites out of Egypt, the word Pharaoh is used to represent the ego. So if it's a story of every one of us, it's a story of us being pursued by our egos, or giving rein to our egos, and living in a state of confusion as a result. And under the same mythology, red represented two things. It represented women, females, and it also represented emotions. So if we put that together, we come up with ego, we come up with emotions, and we also come up with confusion. So when we give rise to the ego and think that we can do everything, we can behave as we like, I am my own man, I can do what I like, and the ego is in charge, we enter into a state of confusion because there's not that sense of balance, which, of course, in Kemet we have the principles of Ma'at, and the word Ma'at, of course, means balance. So we are not in a state of balance. We are in a state of confusion. And when we are in a state of confusion, we live primarily on our emotions, emotions of fear, emotions of anxiety, emotions of tension, and the main emotion of all, which is the emotion of love, is set aside. So those are three things I would throw in there for you. Egypt, or Kemet, is not just a geographical location. It is also a state of mind. When somebody is in a state of mind of Egypt, they are automatically in confusion. They are slaves. Slaves to the body, slaves to confusion, slaves to the emotions. The entity that we get enslaved to the most is our ego. We are being held captive by our animalistic self. However, the human being also has a godly, divine self where it can completely let go of its animalistic urges and completely cleave to God. So that is liberating yourself from Egypt. So again, you strike a balance between your physical needs and your godly needs, or your spiritual needs. And you bring about harmony, homeostasis, balance in yourself. And that essentially is what you should strive to be. And Easter should be your resurrection, your personal resurrection, because it represents a new beginning, a spring. Okay? Spring festivals with the theme of a new life and relief from the cold of winter became connected explicitly to Jesus having conquered death by being resurrected after the crucifixion. And this is a Christian belief. Okay? You don't find this in other religions the same way you find it in Christianity. But what about modern Easter? It's a Christian holiday that celebrates the belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Although a holiday of high religious significance in the Christian faith, many traditions associated with Easter date back to pre-Christian pagan times. So we've established that the Christian belief, and the main point of reference for the Christian belief is the Bible. And if you look at all of the so-called festivals, Christian festivals, they all are rooted in paganism, or what they would call people heathenism. Most agree that the character of the Easter Bunny, most people today, originated in Germany and was then brought to America by Protestant immigrants. But it must have had its roots way back in the Babylonian times with Easter. Just that the Germans took it to America, and that is where it became popular. All right, so it was fading out, but its popularity increased when Germans took it to America, right? And this is what a fellow called George Frank von Frankenau in 1682 wrote. In the European medieval churches, rabbits or hares were often depicted in Christian art. So it came right through the ages into Germany, and they made a big thing of it. The first association of the rabbit with Easter, according to Professor Cusack, was a mention of the Easter hare in a book by this same gentleman, professor of medicine, George Frank von Frankenau, published in 1722. And he recalls a folklore that hares would hide in the colored eggs that children hunted for. This suggests to us that as early as the 18th century, hares were in the eggs that were hidden in the gardens for egg hunts. And this is relatively modern compared to the story of Babylon and Easter, or Esther and Semiramis. During the Middle Ages, people began decorating eggs and eating them as a treat following Mass on Easter Sunday after fasting through Lent. The custom of decorating hard-boiled eggs or blown eggs is still very popular. And you'll notice that I have put the word Mass in red and underlined it. And that is to remind me that I should say a few words about Mass, because this word comes up again around Christmas time, Christmas, but spelled with one S. And when people who are not very well informed and who through the years have been indoctrinated with the Christian religion, when they go to churches, and I mean particularly Roman Catholic, Anglican, and the other smaller religions which are regarded as cults like Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventist, Pentecostal, Methodist, they go and they think that Mass really is the celebration of the resurrection of the avatar for the Christian era, who is Jesus. In actual fact, Mass meant death, not resurrection. It meant death. So the people who worship Nimrod and Baal, and which is still going on, and a lot of these people are running the mainstream churches, they do not see Easter, although they may talk about it as in public. They talk about it as the resurrection of Jesus, or the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In actual fact, they celebrate the death of Jesus Christ. And you have seen some people, very high people, wearing the cross upside down. And they will tell you that that has to do with St. Peter, who says that because he is the one who is represented by Rome, yes? And he is alleged to have said that he's not worthy of being crucified on a cross in a similar manner to Jesus, so he wanted to be crucified on an upside down cross. That's what they will tell you. But it goes much deeper than that, because the upside down cross represents Baal, Satan, the devil. Okay, and I've seen recent pictures of some people of importance or consider themselves to be of importance wear their crosses upside down around their necks. I'm not going to mention names for obvious reasons. So here we have some decorated Easter eggs. Look quite beautiful. And this is quite interesting. Fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons and a haunt for every impure spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable animal. For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her offerings, I think the words are. It's covered here, I can't see it. Okay. What is this all about? Next page will tell us. The merchants of the earth, excuse me, will weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore. Cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones, and pearls, fine linen, purple silk, and scarlet cloth, every sort of citron wood, and articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cargoes of cinnamon and spice, of incense, myrrh, and frankincense, of wine and olive oil, of fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, and human beings sold as slaves. This actually comes from the book of Revelation, I think it's chapter 18 in the Bible, the Christian book. And here it talks about human beings being sold as slaves. And what is interesting about this, and what has it got to do with Easter? Well, recently, about a week ago, coming up to Easter, there was a ship, massive container ship, that got stuck in the Suez Canal, just north of the Red Sea. Coincidental that it's the Red Sea that's involved. And it's at Easter time that this event took place. Was that a coincidence as well? Red Sea, Easter, this ship getting stuck. How could a big ship like that going through a canal where there's no great threat to the ship as such, not from a maritime perspective, nothing, no storm, nothing. And suddenly this ship twists sideways and gets rammed into the bank of the Suez Canal, which is technically part of the Red Sea. And I use the word technically. Yeah. Well, what has been said about this particular ship? It had about 18 to 20,000 of those containers on it. And in those containers, according to many reports that are not in the mainstream media, there were thousands of children who were being trafficked. And in those containers, they also allegedly found weapons of mass destruction. And it is not coincidental that this happened just above the Red Sea in the Suez Canal And at this particular time, Easter, when religious people, those who honestly believe in the resurrection, are paying homage to Jesus. This is the most important festival in the Christian church. But also those who do not believe in Jesus and worship Baal, this would also be the most important time of the year for them. So how could this event occur? The ship is on autopilot. Normally it sails down the middle of the canal, which is the deepest part, because the sides are not very deep. So how come this ship got lodged there? And I came across a report of a woman who was going into the astrology of this and looking at the conjunctions between certain planetary bodies and how that conjunction relates to this particular event. I'm not fully conversant with it, so I didn't introduce it in detail into this presentation. But you cannot talk about Easter without talking about Ascension. You cannot talk about resurrection without talking about Ascension. And the Ascension took place 40 days after the resurrection. According to tradition, Ascension Day was first celebrated in 68 AD or 68 CE. Yeah? However, the first written evidence of the Ascension Day feast occurred in 385 AD. And Ascension Day is one of the 6 holy days where the attendance at Mass is mandatory for Roman Catholics and Anglicans. On the day of the feast, Mass is celebrated and the paschal candle, which was lit on Easter Sunday today, is extinguished. That candle that all of these people who are celebrating Easter would be lit today and then extinguished 40 days from now. Liturgies proclaiming the finished work of salvation and the ascension of the glorified Christ into heaven are recited, followed later by evening prayers. So we have as I said before, we have a dual aspect to Easter. We have those who believe seriously in the resurrection and the ascension, those who believe in the death, not the resurrection as such. Ascension Day is associated across Britain with various festivals ranging from well-dressing in Derbyshire to the planting of the penny hedge in the harbour at Whitbury in Yorkshire. It is also the day for beating the bounds or boundaries of a church parish. The custom was once found in almost every English parish, but now it's only carried out in a few places. In England, eggs laid on Ascension Day are said to never go bad. And of course, with the crossbuns, if you open them up and keep them, if you're a young lady, it means you would probably get married the following year. So none of that is actually religious or spiritual by any stretch of the imagination. So we can call it pagan or heathen if we want to. And that is what the Christian people who worship are actually celebrating. In modern times, it also involves people in the locality walking around their farm manorial, church or civil boundaries, pausing as they pass certain trees or walls or hedges that denote the extent of the boundary, to cry out or to pray, and ritually beat particular landmarks with sticks. Nothing holy or spiritual about that. Again, fully pagan. Now, we as people are meant to diminish the power of confusion and selfishness in ourselves and become a person more concerned with others, sharing more, caring more, and through this awaken a greater light and blessings for ourselves. This is really what the spiritual aspect of Easter should be. The truly spiritual one. And I'm not talking about the religious or Christian one, because again, you have to make the distinction between the two, because things that are Christian are not necessarily spiritual. People who are Christian are not necessarily spiritual. Okay? But we have to get rid of the confusion and the ego, right? And through this, we must awaken the light and blessings for ourselves. And we should ask ourselves some questions. What is it about myself that I want to refrain from, that I want to remove from my life? And through this reflection, we become better, stronger, and more connected to the supernal or heavenly light, receiving the blessings and fulfillment for which we are destined. As individuals, as well as society, we can step up and assume our godlike creative abilities and better our lives personally and globally, something that is needed at this time more than ever. As you decorate your eggs or just meditate on the full moon in Libra, which is April the 7th to the 8th this month, for 3 days from now, try to embody the Exodus myth and liberate yourself from inner and outer slavery. So don't be a slave to your emotions, don't be a slave to your ego, and don't be a slave to any external force. And Easter 2021, which is today, signals a special resurrection or ascension, because in this war that we are fighting against Baal, Moloch, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, we have to ascend, not just be resurrected, but we have to ascend from the third dimension to the fifth, from the lower self, from slavery of the birth certificate to sovereignty, a resurrection from low vibrations by having the right thoughts, eating the right foods, by meditating, and that way we raise our vibrations. From negativity, a resurrection from lockdowns. And on my program this morning, I was talking about this, the European part of the European Union, the legislative part, giving direct instructions to all the countries that they should not make vaccines, and they cannot make vaccines mandatory, because that would be flying against the Nuremberg Code, which came in at the end of the Second World War. In the United States, we also had the Supreme Court said vaccines cannot be made mandatory. Okay? So that is part of getting away from the slavery of the birth certificate and moving more into sovereignty. A resurrection from lockdowns, from COVID, from vaccinations, most importantly from fear. Most importantly, because this is what is driving everything. And if you are increasing your vibrations, then you are reducing your fear. A resurrection from government lies, from admiralty and maritime law. But when we resurrect, where do we go? What happens after that? We have to ascend, yes? And we ascend to our higher self, our spiritual self. So we resurrect from the physical and the emotions of the physical, which are keeping us back. Whether those emotions be gluttony or sexual emotions or selfish emotions, emotions of materialism, those are what we have to resurrect ourselves from and give flight and freedom to our spiritual and higher self. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the presentation. Are you there, Brother Tahaka? Brother Tahaka? Can't hear anyone.
Yep. Okay, Brother Vasco.
Did you hear all of that?
Yes, I did. Let me just take down the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, let me just move it. All right, that's better. Yep, we're back. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Now we are open for questions and comments from all those who are watching. And I'm sure you've heard very clearly Brother Vasco's presentation about Easter. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions people are burning to ask. Well, let me start proceedings. Easter. One of the things I'll just say, I mean, I know you're from Barbados, yep?
Sorry, I'm from Africa via Barbados, yes?
Okay, Africa via Barbados. I'm from I'm from the same, Jamaica via Africa. Now, one of the traditions in the Caribbean I noticed, and it's right across the Caribbean, at Easter, kites are flown. We normally fly kites.
Yes.
And I was thinking to myself, because I remember when I was a child, I used to look forward to Easter because, you know, bun and cheese, kite and sugar and water, that was the, you know, those was the traditions.
Yeah.
So what do you think the meaning of kite flying is? Why do you think all over the Caribbean and Easter, especially Good Friday, kites, people start flying kites?
I must admit that I am not familiar with that at all. So I didn't put it into the presentation because it wasn't something that registered with me. Otherwise, I would have put it in. But I don't know where the custom of kite flying would have come from. It obviously doesn't appear to be a European type thing. I would say that, if anything, it would probably be part of our African tradition.
Well, apart from Spain, apparently it is also done in Spain.
All right. Okay.
You know. Yeah, I mean, I was just curious. I was just curious about why kites would be flown in that way. Okay, referring back to your...
Sorry, no, if you want to look at it from an esoteric perspective, Look at a kite, and a kite has it flies, it soars into the sky. Yeah, it has an element of freedom about it.
Well, that's exactly what I read. It gives a sense of freedom, the sense of, and I suppose, like you said, now that corresponds with the ascension when
Absolutely correct. Absolutely.
they rose. So I suppose, when you think about it, you can always make a connection. But it was just strange because kites was something that I always looked forward to.
Yes, and we made our own, didn't we?
Yep, made your own kites.
I remember. Yeah.
In my case, my grandfather used to bring me a kite every Easter.
Oh,
that was a present.
Weren't you the lucky one? I never met one of my grandfathers.
Okay.
They all had passed before I was born. Apparently, they passed not at old age, but probably middle age or younger age.
All right.
So I only knew one grandparent. That was my maternal grandparent. And it was her name that I mentioned earlier. And she was, one of the people who actually looked after me. How it is in the Caribbean. Grandparents are always there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, referring back to the presentation itself, you spent quite a bit of time talking about the Baal.
Baal, B-A-A-L, yes.
Yeah, Baal, in other words, Nimrod.
Yes, Nimrod, Baal, Lucifer, Satan.
Okay.
Moloch, all the same entity.
There was a point here that Baal is a Canaanite god, not the devil or Lucifer, who was also two distinct characters. So, it's just a point that was made. I mean, I couldn't say yes or no to that. I just don't know enough. I don't know if you know.
Well, it depends on how you use the word God, because if you worship anything, that thing, that entity is regarded as your God. Okay? And
no, but Baal, I mean, this question is referring to Baal, B-A-L-L, is a Canaanite god.
Yeah,
because we were saying Nimrod, and the Nimrod, the city of
Babel.
Nineveh, wasn't it, that Nimrod is connected to?
Yeah.
And that city of Nineveh would be in present day, I think would be in present day Iraq.
Iraq is correct.
Yeah, if I remember right. So the Canaan now, that would be where Israel is situated right now, the land of Canaans.
But it's
so I don't know if there was an interlink between the Canaanites and the people of Nineveh.
There would have been, yes. But the point I'm making here, whether Baal was a Canaanite god or not, he was anything that is worshipped is considered to be a god. Okay, and the Canaanites would have worshipped Baal, but it doesn't mean that Baal was considered to be a good god or a bad god. Nimrod, by his people's reckoning, was considered to be a good god, a good leader, okay, a great hunter. But by the same token, he did not like the rules of Yahweh, as it said. So he wanted to live by his rules, but his people worship him almost as a god. You see what I mean?
Okay.
So people can worship anything. Some people used to worship stones and worship animals. In India, for instance, cows are considered to be sacred. That's why they're allowed to walk the streets in certain parts of the country, and nobody will molest them. You can't eat beef. It depends on individuals' take on who they want to worship as God. But the point is that Baal is seen, and the evidence is there to support the fact that anyone who worships Baal is worshiping an entity that is diametrically opposed to God, the God of the Christian, the God that we think about, yes, the Creator. And the activities of people who worship Baal are inimical to the activities and the interests of the people who worship God, the Creator, Yahweh.
Well, the same person here, Conan Lee, said, sorry, he said Nimrod is a mythical person, a mythical character, not a real person, as mentioned in, was it Genesis chapter 10?
Right, okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, is that what you, because I was, if I remember right, I was brought up to say Nimrod was an actual, he actually lived on Earth. He was actually a real person.
They are all mythical beings. If you want to go down that route, if you want to widen the discussion, Nimrod, Jesus, yes, they're all mythical people. They never existed as people.
Well,
and you must remember that firstly you had mysticism, then you had coming from mysticism, astrology, because people understood more about the workings of nature, the movement of stars, and they realized that at certain times of the year certain alignments were made, and they always considered these different alignments to have great potent meanings and power, right? And then out of that came what we perceive today as the Bible. Okay, so the Bible, right, is just another form of mythology or astrology, as I see it. Astrology mainly because it works in tandem with the movements of the sun and the stars. So if Nimrod was mythical, then Baal would have to be mythical.
Okay, well, that's well, all I can say, that's
a very debatable point.
Very debatable, very controversial on Easter, when we know that millions of Christians are now in observing this festival.
Yeah, but
sure they will be looking at it differently.
I expect to be criticized on this because I'm talking to some people who are Christians or who believe in the resurrection as such. Two of my other presentations, one is entitled the Christ within, okay? The Christ within the human body, because that's where Christ is, not some mythical person who is supposed to have been nailed to an external cross. Okay.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to talk about Kemet. Let me mention Kemet very quickly. If you go back to Kemet, okay, there's a word spelled K-R-S-T. K-R-S-T, no vowels, Christ. And that means the anointed. And that referred to the Christ within, not the external Christ. That is straight out of Kemet. Okay, carry on.
Okay. No, I was just going to say that looking at it another way, because obviously Easter, the actual festival that we're talking about today, we know it's based around the resurrection of Christ. That's what we are told. Now, when you say Christ was a mythical figure, or Jesus Christ was a mythical figure to what we're referring to, we are told that there was a reference to him at the time, because I'm sure you believe the Romans existed.
Yes, under Constantine, yes.
No, but I mean, before Constantine.
Before Constantine, but
yeah, the Roman Empire existed.
Yeah, but I'm saying that you're going to get onto Constantine at some time because you're talking about Jesus and religion, yes?
Yeah, no. But my point is the Romans themselves.
Yeah.
Within the Romans, they wrote, or they came to the conclusion in their writings that such a figure did exist. They themselves said it.
Yeah, because of we have the story of Pontius Pilate yes, who was the Roman representative in the Middle East at that time, where the story of Jesus came about. Okay, but if you look at it historically, there's no record of anyone by that name. It's just that the name Jesus came into being about hundreds of years after this myth started. And the people in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, who wrote about him about 300 years after the story was all over the place. They had no first-hand knowledge of anyone by that name. And of course, the name itself is a Greek name. But and the Bible, which is the point of reference for all Christians, the Bible itself tells you, go within, the Christ within, not the Christ without, the Christ within you.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the reference there to Kemet, and that word KRST, the anointed, yes. And when I make the presentation about the Christ within, a lot of religious people suddenly seem to understand that it is not some person who was nailed to some external cross, but the ascension, which I touched on here in this presentation, is an ascension within the human body. Within, not without. And if I get a chance to make that presentation for you, I will show exactly what the crucifixion and the resurrection and ascension are really all about within the human body.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because I'm just trying to keep it as close to Easter
as possible.
Yeah, as possible without
all of this is relevant. All of this is relevant.
Yes, it's definitely relevant. But I'm just thinking today we have millions probably around the world of people in church, and as far as Christianity is concerned, from what I understand, Easter is the most important date.
Festival,
in the calendar for them.
Christian calendar, yes, I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. But you will also notice too that the Piscean age, yes, which is the Christian age, is on its way out, and we are now in the age of Aquarius, which is about personal freedom and personal relationship with the Creator. So you're not going through, a whole lot of intermediaries.
Well, if I'm going to say this, if you could come to such a conclusion so rapidly in terms of Christ and Christmas, why then do you think that hundreds of millions of people have had the wool pulled over their eyes in that case? And especially I'm referring to people like, say, on the African continent or African people, because the last time I looked at some figures, it said they're upwards of 400 million people who would call themselves Christians that resides on the African continent.
Yeah.
And all Christians, whatever denomination it is, they would adhere to Easter in some form or another.
Yeah.
Because I know that in my young days when I was growing up, I was brought up as Jehovah's Witness. And right now, and I can tell you within them was by far the most important sort of celebration throughout the year. So that would be my question. So what do you think it is about us as African people then? Because remember, Christianity isn't our tradition. It is not something, well, it depends how you look at it, because some people would say Christianity came out of African traditional beliefs.
Yeah.
So do Islam and so forth. But Christianity as it is practiced today, or Christianity as it is manifested through the Bible, is was alien. You can say was alien to the vast majority of Africans. I'm picking my word very carefully because I know that in Egypt, around that part of the world, you can say the oldest Christian church exists, the oldest Coptic
Yeah.
church.
Ethiopia and Egypt, yes, around that area.
Ethiopian Egypt.
Mhm.
But when we look at the rest of Africa, we can see it's a relative recent thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what do you think it is about Christianity, especially about this particular time, especially this festival, Easter, that African people, when I say Africans, I'm talking about Black people in general, because in the Caribbean and Americans everywhere, find so fascinating? Because one, in the Caribbean, I mentioned the kite flying, I mentioned the bun and cheese that came down, I mentioned the sugar and water, I mentioned all those things are religiously carried out at Easter,
Mhm.
and still are.
Yeah. Okay.
So what do you think is so significant about the situation that we are so glued to it?
I don't think there's any one African um, belief, religious belief, where the words Satan and Jesus are mentioned. No original native African belief. You don't see the word Satan and you don't see the word Jesus in any of them. But as far as the mainland, the motherland, Africa is concerned, and the Caribbean and the Americas, we have to link this into the scramble for Africa and the colonization of Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas. And you remember I give you an example. You remember the story of Kinta Kunte, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying his name is Kinta Kunte, and he was beaten mercilessly to take on the name that the slave owner wanted to give him. Yeah?
Yeah.
Now, we can amplify that right across the Caribbean and the Americas. It was a question of the captured brothers and sisters from Africa having to accept and take on the Europeans' religion in order to survive to some extent, in order to survive a very hostile and alien environment into which they were being taken. In the motherland in Africa, missionaries often accompanied the soldiers who went up there, the captors, okay? And there are stories of missionaries not only going into villages and then reporting back to the colonists the number of young men in certain villages so that the captors can come and take them, right? But they were also telling people, well, this is our religion, and do you know if you don't change your first name to John or Harry or one of our names, when you die, you're going to go to hell. And it was this over a period of time, right, that got our ancestors and our people on the motherland changing their religion because suddenly this concept of heaven and hell frightened them, scared them, and not only scared them, but in order to survive without being put under the whip or under the lash and all of that, they had to change their religion. Now, in modern times, we have lots of African brothers now who have become preachers. Mhm. And this is not really preaching about people about going within themselves and meditating and making a one-to-one connection with the Creator. A lot of these churches are set up as businesses by the people who set them up. They're run as businesses. And I would refer you to a very interesting book called The Invasion of the Funky Pastors, written by a Nigerian gentleman called Harry Ajina. And I would think that everybody ought to read that book. And in that book, what he's talking about is how religion is destroying Nigeria's culture. So everything about African culture is being destroyed by Western religion. And we are seeing every little room that you can see is now some kind of church by all these exotic names, but they're all preaching the same thing that the main church, this is the Catholic Church, wants them to preach. So whether you're Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, Pentecost, Seventh-day Adventist, Jehovah's Witness, they're all preaching the same thing, which is the external Savior. The external Savior who died on the cross. The Savior is going to come back and save you, rather than tell the people the truth, which is the kingdom of God is within. You have to go within. And in inverted commas, even Jesus said it, right? On the feast of the Passover, which I touched on the Passover here, which runs in tandem with Easter. At the feast of the Passover, when Jesus intimated to his disciples that he was actually going to be going away and he will not be coming back, what was his answer to that query from them? He said, enter into the city. Not a town, not a city like London, not a village. City in antiquity meant higher consciousness. In other words, meditate. Enter into the city, and there you will meet a man with a pitcher. What do you carry in a pitcher? Water. Okay? Follow him, and he will take you to a house, the upper chamber of a house, and I will meet you there. So let me break that down into what it really means. The picture represents the age of Aquarius, which we are in now. Okay? So what he's actually saying, in the age of Aquarius, go into the city, in other words, meditate, and you will go to an upper room in the house. The body is the house, right? The upper room is the right hemisphere of the brain, the feminine side of the brain, the feminine part of it. So if you meditate now, we are in the age of Aquarius. We've left the age of Pisces, one of the most destructive and cruel eras, 2,000 years in written history, the Christian era. Okay, I mean, now in the age of Aquarius, which is the spiritual era. Meditate, and I will meet you there. I'm not going to meet you outside. I'm going to meet you on the inside. I will meet you inside. So when you meditate in this particular age, that is when you will come one-to-one with the Creator. That is what he said. Yeah, that's there in the Bible at Passover. And we are now in the age of Aquarius, and this is the age where we should be meditating, because we are fighting the evil forces of Baal. This is a spiritual battle between good and evil, between Baal and God, the Creator. Good guys versus bad guys. That's what's being played out here with COVID, with lockdowns. With all
okay, let's try and keep it on to Easter, because otherwise, I know it's tempting to just.
No, but Passover is Easter. We are talking about the same thing.
I just want to keep it to the question, the truth about Easter.
Yeah.
So again, you started off with Nimrod and Nineveh and so forth. Now, yeah. So if we look at geography, for example, and I know you talked about the white man's religion and Christianity being forced onto African people, but when we look back in time, we find that Christianity emerged at a time, and it did not emerge in Europe.
No, it emerged around Ethiopia, Abyssinia.
So you can say, in other words, Christianity is not a white man's religion. If we look at it that way, it wasn't a religion that was devised by them. It was a religion that was adopted by them at a later date. And of course, once they adopted it, then they seek to make certain changes to make it reflect
Correct.
them.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, so that it would fit into their narrative. So, you
Right.
know, Jesus became white and
Yeah.
and you know, all the rest.
But as far as we know, it wasn't universal. It wasn't spread right across the whole of Africa. Yeah. It came from the northeast corner, Ethiopia, which was then Abyssinia, and Kemet.
Well,
The Greeks and the Romans. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, yes, that's true to an extent. Now, you did mention earlier that Easter is only celebrated by Christians. It's not celebrated by Muslims, and it's not celebrated by Jews.
Or Hindus or Buddhists.
I mean, yeah, but the religions, that the Abrahamic religions then, if you want to put it that way, out of the 3 Abrahamic religions, only the Christians would celebrate Easter. Now, as we know, Judaism predated Christianity by quite a long way. Now, when we said Christianity or Abrahamic religions was not spread throughout Africa, when we think about it, that's not totally true before the coming of the Europeans. Because if you look at, say, for instance, there's certain sets of people in West Africa that would refer to themselves as Jews.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were present in those lands long before the coming then of colonialism, before all the missionaries who went in and actually surveyed Africa for the slave trade.
Right.
So in that case, such religions or such faith must have been spread throughout Africa when we think about it.
Right.
In that way.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Well, let me be a little bit more controversial, yeah, and suggest to you that they're all one. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Let me suggest to you that they're all one and the same.
Yes. I mean, I agree with that. I agree.
You would agree with that. Let me
Yes.
give you a very simple example. Okay? And it is so simple that if you don't think about it, you can easily overlook it. Are you familiar with the black cube of Saturn?
The
black cube of Saturn.
The black tube.
Cube, C-U-B-E. The black
cube of Saturn. Yeah. No.
Okay. Outside of the Vatican, there is a black cube representing Saturn. Yes, the planet Saturn or Satan. Right. Okay. Remember, I'm not going to move away too much from it because there are other things I could say. All right. Okay. So that represents Saturn, and that represents the Christian religion. Okay? That black cube that is right in front of the Vatican.
Right.
When you go to Mecca, when people go to Mecca, and they march around the Kaaba.
Yeah, yes? The black rock, yeah.
What are they?
Yeah, they're stoning the devil. They're stoning the devil.
7 times around the Kaaba.
Yeah,
what does the Kaaba look like?
It's like a black rock, if I remember. It's like a meteorite.
Black cube. Yes?
Okay.
A black cube.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Identical to the one in front of the Vatican. All right? So we have a connection there. Yes? Let me bring the Jewish connection in. That word that the cube that they march around is called the Kaaba. What is one of the most important books in the Jewish faith called?
The Torah.
It's called the Kabbalah. One of the most important, not the most important.
The Kabbalah, yeah.
Kabbalah, yes?
Okay.
So if you put Kaaba, look at it. Kaaba and Allah, Kabbalah, yes? And they march around the Kaaba. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You can see the connection. Kaaba, the black cube. It's there in the Vatican. It's in Saudi Arabia at Mecca. And one of the most important books in the Jewish religion is called the Kabbalah.
The Kabbalah, yeah.
So you can see straight away a connection. And if you go back and do some research, you'll find that the religion that is known as Islam was actually started by the Catholic Church.
Aye. The first time I've heard that.
But you tell a modern day Muslim that, and he will give you a whole fancy story about how it started. You see, everything we've been told and we've been taught has been a complete and total lie. And this is what this period of time, the revelation, the awakening, the shift, all of that is going to be exposed, and it's being exposed in little bits as we move forward, but it's going to accelerate. And then people are going to find out the real truth as to who and what we really are, and who and how things really should have been. So everything has been turned around. So you have to use a mirror to get at the real truth of what is reality.
Okay, it's just that Vasco has gone dark. You kind of disappeared.
I've gone dark. That's because it's gone dark outside, and I didn't switch my light on.
I know. Yeah, that's fine. That's brilliant.
For sure. Yes. Okay.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So
you see the connections there. Yes.
Oh,
There's
yes.
no great difference between them. They're all preaching, and they're all preaching the same thing: the external creator. When the creator is inside. The Christ.
Okay. If that's the case, then as we say, Christianity is their holiest time that's occurring right now.
Yeah.
In terms of Easter. So, what is the equivalent? Is there an equivalent that would say reflect Easter for Jews and Muslims if they're all preaching the same thing?
Well, Jews have the Passover, which is basically the Jewish version of Easter. Muslims would have what? Ramadan, which would be practically the same thing. But I have never actually studied those religions in detail. In fact, I've not studied any religion in great detail, except that in my research and in my readings, I can tell you that the religions that are teaching about an external savior and an external Christ are absolutely wrong, because Christ is within, and that's why you have to meditate. You have to go within. And the Bible tells you, go within yourself, go within. Christ is within. The kingdom of God is within.
Okay. So so what you're saying here is that to all those hundreds of millions of Christians, right, followers of Christ, who are diligently, you can say, looking at Jesus's life, how he was crucified, to his body being entombed, to him being resurrected on the third day.
Yeah.
They are just living an illusion. If they were to look within themselves, they would find the answer. Correct.
Absolutely spot on. Absolutely correct. The answer is within, not without. And invariably, let me put it this way. For Africans, yes, for Africans especially, if they are, and I'm going to pose this as a question to you, if they're looking for, and they believe in an external savior who's going to come and save them, controversial question. What color is that savior likely to be if they continue believing in an external savior?
Well, if they're a Christian and they're believing in that, They have those images on their walls and in their churches and in everything. So if Jesus is to come back, I doubt he will change color according to them. So he'll be a white European with blue eyes and blonde hair.
And
It
do you
seems
know?
like.
And do you know that in Kenya, I think it was last year or perhaps the year before, someone with striking facial
Yeah,
image
it was
of
actually in the Congo. Yeah.
was it in the Congo? You know what I'm
Yeah, it
talking
was
about?
in the Congo.
In the
Yeah.
Congo. And you know what happened? Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Some Africans took him on board and started taking him to houses. Look, Jesus has come back, and they were demanding money from people as well, and the government soon put a stop to it. But you can see what would happen. Okay, here, this man, look at the painting on your wall. You know, doesn't he look like that? This is Jesus. He's back, and you can see not only the folly of that, but you can see how innocent, naive, simple people could take that on board and you know, run with it, so to speak. Yeah. But again, back to it, the kingdom of God is within. And we have to, this is the resurrection, Easter, the resurrection of Christ. And we should be resurrecting the Christ within. And there are ways that you can actually resurrect the Christ within. That's what resurrection is about, not an external one.
Well, I hope a lot of Christians are listening to this because.
Well, I do have a few issues with some Christians. One of them very dear to me, and we do have this conversation quite often. Yeah, but the thing about it is that people who have been conditioned over a long period of time, yes, 35 or 40 years into taking the Bible literally, yes. When the Bible itself says it's not to be taken literally, it talks about these things are parables. Okay. It also said, beware of the dark sayings. A dark saying is something that doesn't literally mean what it says. Yes.
Okay.
Right. You say to me, Vasco, next Saturday, let's go and paint the town. Okay. And we meet up. And I bring along a bucket of paint and a brush. That's not what you meant, is it?
Definitely not.
So I'm taking what you said literally. You said you're going to paint the town. I'm bringing the paint and the brush. What you simply meant was, let's go and have a good time. So the Bible itself says that be aware of the dark sayings, and everything is in parable. And in mythology, in ancient times, when people wrote documents, they always personified certain events and certain characters, events and other things, and they would give them human personalities. Yes?
Okay.
And that is why we have this controversy over these characters in the Bible as to whether they existed or not. They are representations of different things.
Well, the other point, because we're drawing to a close, but the other point I'd like to bring up, like Christmas, hasn't Easter just become a great time, a period to have a good time?
A social event.
Yeah, it becomes a social event, because how many actual people that's now claiming that they're celebrating Easter actually believe in Easter or have any interest apart from the commercial aspect or the social aspect of it? Because as I mentioned, growing up, when we used to fly our kite and eat our bun and cheese and stuff, most people around me never give two toss about the actual meaning. It was just a tradition. It was just an excuse to have a good time. And when we look around most societies, I would say that is the case now.
You're absolutely right.
I don't know what you think there. So it's like it's been driven, in other words, by capitalism, by commercialism. That's what's driving it.
Yes,
Because
and that
the
represents
companies,
paganism.
if I was to go in a shop now to buy a bun, it would have doubled in price because over this period, so somebody's making a killing.
Right,
in
but
terms of
let me stretch that out a
monetary.
little bit. Let me stretch that out a little bit, Brother Tucker. If you were to go into some shops now to buy a bun, yes,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't wear a mask, you may not be allowed into that shop. There's nothing spiritual about that, is it?
Nothing at all.
Even today, Easter Day, which should be a religious day where you take, you engage in very few activities. You feed yourself and your family, you relax, you probably study the word of your religion or what have you, but not running up and down outside and, engaging in all this kind of non-spiritual physical activity. Yeah, that's what it's meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, it's become commercialized. And what I'm saying is that this is part of the new pagan aspect of Easter. Because if you take away the spiritual aspect, you're then left with the pagan, yes, heathen aspect. But my question is, what's wrong with paganism as opposed to religion?
Yeah. All right. Just to add to that, there's another little comment here. Plus, to get on to Constantine now, a Roman Empire, and as we know, the Roman, in terms of their practices and belief, were some of the most sadistic people ever that lived.
Pagans,
and they then adopted Christianity, and they then grafted Christianity on their belief system, as you mentioned before, Saturn, the planets named after Roman gods and what they actually believe. So we can see that once the Romans got hold of it and the Romans gave birth to the Catholic Church, we can say that's when the corruption and the real sedition really begun, when the Catholic Church got hold of it, because the Catholic Church itself, I don't think there's nothing more evil than that on earth.
Right. Well,
when you check it out.
Yeah. Okay. The Catholics had a festival called Saturnalia. Okay, was celebrated around about the 17th of December. And remember, the original name for Rome was Saturnia. Okay, and the festival was called Saturnalia. And at that time, at that festival, there was a little bit of leveling of the playing field, in that the masters would serve the servants, for that particular festival. What was important about it is that any type of debauchery was carried out. Women would come into the streets naked, and the only apparel they had on was a bonnet. Okay? They would put their names in a hat. And young men would then draw, whichever woman's name was drawn up, she would be his partner for that year. And they would have it off in the street, in the church, anywhere, and the priests themselves would join in. All right? But what is also important about this particular festival of Saturnalia is that after the festival, there was always a human sacrifice to Baal. Okay, there was always a human sacrifice. That still goes on today, right? Now, when Constantine became emperor of Rome, most of the Roman Empire were pagans.
Yeah, that's what I said. They all were.
Yeah, and Christianity was a fledgling movement, so to speak. Yes, just beginning at the grassroots. But Constantine was a pretty smart guy. he thought, well, how can I find one particular idea or one system that can drastically unite my empire? I know what it is. I'm going to become a Christian, and then I'm going to put out a decree that everybody must become a Christian, otherwise they're going to have their heads chopped off. So the pagans, oh yeah, we'll become Christians, of course. We're going to be Christians, right? And they all became Christians. But guess what? They never gave up their pagan practices. So instead of Christianity taking over paganism, paganism has taken over Christianity. And that's why you find all these holidays and festivals are all pagan festivals.
So to conclude, because Ndugaman is here, we're running to an end, and I'd like to thank you again, Brother Vasco, for a wealth of knowledge and very interested and engaging topic. So to answer the question, the truth about Easter. So what we can really say that Easter is, if you want to use the word, it is truly a pagan festival.
Correct.
And you have shown the roots of it, how it came about. And when the Romans finally took over Christianity and began to direct Christianity, the practices of the Romans were never given up. Christianity was just grafted onto that. And hence, even when we go back to the city of Nineveh, we were told those practices were devilish practices as well, that also got grafted on, to Christianity and what the Romans took. So we can say, to conclude and to answer the question, the truth about Easter, Easter is truly a pagan festival. And for all those who are out there celebrating Easter, do they really understand and know what they're celebrating? And how many of them have done their research like yourself and look into where it's coming from and what it really, really represents? And
the truth is same of Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, right through.
All of them. All of them, when you trace them back.
Absolutely. And if I may just finish by saying this, have you ever seen any images of how some modern churches, people behave in those churches now?
Why? Put it this way. I'll say this. When I was growing up, I remember my mother, she just had a habit. Whoever came to the house and said, send them to church. And this started from Jamaica with my grandmother, actually my grandparents. They would always think it's better for young children to go to church. So hence you might have different denomination come in and say, why don't they set? So we'll be sent there. So when I arrived in this country now, my mother used to send us to, they used to actually come around in a Sunday school van and pick us up. And she used to send us to some, I think it was some branch of the Church of God of Prophecy. And we would be set there, and she never came. My father never came. The van would come, pick us up as children, take us off. Until one day she decided that she was going to come and have a look. And when she did come and have a look what was going on there, we never went back to that church. She took us out straight away, and we never set foot back in that situation, Right. So as you say, what's going on in some of these places is defy belief.
Well, let me just finish by saying two things, very quickly. You go to some of these churches and see how they encourage some of the youngsters to come up in front of the audience and dance, and they play the music, and it's like going to a dance hall. And if you look at some of the young ladies who go to church and sit in the front pews right in front of the pastor, and some of them are wearing some of the skimpiest dresses that you could ever wish to see, and crossing their legs. And the poor pastor, I'm certain, he's undergoing temptation like nobody's business while he's there trying to preach, some of them. Okay? So that is part and parcel of what is going on. But by the same token, ask ourselves, this question. Are these churches really encouraging people to be better human beings? Are they encouraging people to radiate love and affection to others, to live in a way that would attract the well wishes of other people? Oh, look, man, this person is going to church and this person is doing this. Let me tell you one story, and I'm going to shut up after this, about the vaccinations. There's a certain church that I was told of where the pastor encouraged everybody to wear masks. And this whole thing about mask wearing is part of a satanic ritual as well that's being played on the world. But this pastor encouraged all his congregation to wear the mask. And then I was told that a couple of weeks ago, he actually had the vaccine, yes, which some people are interpreting as the biblical mark of the beast. And remember, the beast simply means the body, yes, because the spirit and the body are enmity with each other. You have to subjugate the body to let the spirit rise. So he had the mark of the beast, the injection, and he's encouraging all his congregation to do the same. He is the pastor of the church. If man-made law says you should do this, he should do like some of the other preachers, one or two, who were bold enough to stand up and say, that is man-made law, but we are about the law of God, cosmic law, the law of the universe. We're not engaging in man-made law. But that has happened. I've heard of preachers who are in the churches getting into politics. And I came across reports that said that one of the biggest atheists in the world, a fellow called George Soros, has paid millions to certain churches. I'm not going to name which type of church it is. I come across this. And they're supposed to get in the pulpit and preach to their congregation that they should vote for a particular individual. And they've been given money to do
Yeah, well, that's been going on from time immemorial. Because even if you remember when, according to the Bible, Jesus went into the temple and had to kick all them,
yes.
throw the things out. So we know that the church
but that was
is a very corrupt. It's a very corrupt institution, whether it may be Catholic, Protestants, whatever.
Absolutely.
And it's been proven with the scandals after scandals after scandals. So it's not me sitting here making things up. It's out there for everybody to see. So what's really going on? So anyway, Vasco, we've really run out of time. I'd like to thank you again for coming. And just before I pass over to Ndugu Imani to bring this session to a close, I'd just like to remind everybody again about African Liberation Day, which is coming up on Sunday the 30th and Monday the 31st of May. The theme this year is Pan-Africanism, building for the 22nd century. And like we said, we'll be having speakers and contributors from all over the Pan-African world. So as things progress, I'll be updating you until we'll be able to tell you fully exactly who will be appearing at African Liberation Day this year. But it's an event that the PSCM has been doing since 1975. That makes what? I think this year is the 46th consecutive time this organization has been celebrating that momentous event of African Liberation Day, which started in 1963, and it was driven by Haile Selassie and Kwame Nkrumah. So it's a very important event. So unlike Easter, which is very much rooted in paganism and all kind of weird activities, I think if you come to African Liberation Day, you join us with African Liberation Day, no such occurrence will occur. It will just something that will be wholesome and positive and will offer you keys to help you along the road of liberation. So again, we extend an invitation to anybody in the Pan-African world to come. And this year, because it'll be virtual, it will be online. We are literally inviting the Pan-African world to this event. You'll be able to tune in on the 30th and 31st of May. So at this point, I'd like to hand you over to Ndugu Amani, who will be closing this session for us.
Asante sana, Ndugu. And again, Asante sana, Ndugu Vasco. Again, enlightening, informative, and for something for us to very much to focus upon, and very much, you know, Pan-African Congress movement in our traditions that we are promoting, the African spiritual traditions, is again, as you're talking about the ascension within, the resurrection within, of being Christ-like within. That is, you know, we're not promoting the anointed, the one who's the risen Christ is you, is Haru, is you coming forth. And so we were doing this at the beginning of the session, and we'll end in the same way. So again, thank you all, and just to say again, if you wish to take part, please do. But if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But we're going to bring it to a close by using again the vibration and resonating with that vibration, the one vibration that is all existence, that we all emanate from, that we all come from. And we'll also be thinking of thanks and appreciation for the all, or the creator, our higher selves, Nebuchadnezzar, the powers, the forces of nature, and the ancestors that we call into our conscious awareness. They're always with us, never left us, never apart from us. They are us. We brought them into into our conscious state, that we could call upon them, and so they could help us with understanding and the wisdom and the information, so that we can use that as intent to move forward individually and as a people. So giving thanks, using the vibration to bring us into connection with each other as we take leave of each other in peace, in fraternal love, and ancestral love. So I'm going to share my screen, Ndugu. There we are. Okay. Okay, is that, can you see that, Ndugu?
Yes, it's up.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to ring the chime again, the triangle chime. This time 7 times. The 7 is the quantity for spiritual quantity for wisdom, seeking, and truth, and intuition, which very much was about the theme of today, getting to the truth and going to that wisdom. Understand, hopefully, that those of you already on your journey, continue you on your journey, and those starting on your journey of understanding and wisdom and understanding, they gave you direction and give you areas that you can now explore. So, as I strike the chime 7 times, giving thanks to the powers, giving thanks, and they resonate, go around you, through you, and over you, as we feel the energy of each other, and we part in love and fraternal, and in fraternal love and ancestral love. Okay, so I'll begin. Moja. Mbili. Tatu. Ine. Tana. Sita. Saba. And so, again, we say the words of affirmation and power on screen. Our words have power, vibration has power. Be careful of what we say because we bring it into existence. We have the same power as the creator. The creator is us and we are the creator. So, as I say it, just follow me. Nguvu zote.
Nguvu zote.
Kwa watu wetu.
Kwa watu wetu.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Mapenzi ya wote.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Ni mapenzi yetu.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Hakuna mwanzo.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Na hakuna mwisho.
Funny in Kemetian. Anuk, amen.
Anuk, amen.
All power to our people. The will of the all is our will. There is no beginning and there is no end to us. I am, amen. I am that creative truth. Asante sana, Jamal.
Yeah, Santa Sana and Dugrimani. And again, Santa Sana to Brother Vasco for his presentation. And a bigger Santa Sana for all those who tuned in today. And we'll be back again next Sunday, same time, with another dynamic, interesting discussion. So until then, I bid you kwaheri.